Whew, let's take a breath again. I'm not going to say what I usually say on the first Sunday of the month. I'm not going to talk about how fast this year is going. I'm not going to ask you, can you believe this is July already? I'm not going to even tell you what month it is, how far in the year we are, because we got into that last month. So I'm not going to say any of that, except that this is July. And this is the month of freedom. That's the theme for everybody for the year. I mean, for the month of July, everywhere is freedom, 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 everywhere in this country. It's freedom. And so that's why this month we're talking about bursting the bubble of limitation, freeing ourselves of limitation. And doing that keeps us in the land of plenty, which, you know, for this year, we're dwelling in the land of plenty throughout the year 2019. And so we can't dwell any place where there's plenty if we don't have freedom, if there are limitations. And so we want to burst that bubble of limitation. You know, a bubble is I call it an illusion, because it isn't, there isn't reality to it. It doesn't have firmness, it doesn't have any solidity, it doesn't have any reality. So we can just burst that bubble of limitation that we find ourselves in, and then we can be free to live the lives that we were created to live. Ernest Holmes says, there is no limitation outside our own ignorance. And since we can all conceive of a greater life than that, which greater good than we've already experienced, then we all have the ability to transcend those past experiences and live a greater life. There is no limitation outside our own ignorance. And since we can all conceive of greater good than we have experienced, then we all have the ability to transcend those past experiences, those previous experiences, and live a greater life. Imagine that. It's all up to us. As usual, it's all up to us. It's our own ignorance that is the limitation, our own ignorance of how the law works, our own ignorance of how God works, our own ignorance of the power that resides within each of us that keeps us in that place of limitation. And so what we want to look at this month is how we burst through that, how we free ourselves of that illusion of limitation. And one of the great things that keeps us in limitation is what I call the worthiness factor. And that's what I'm talking about today, the worthiness factor. That whole false belief that we have about worthiness or unworthiness. And worthiness, you know, is about value. It's about significance. It's about how we feel about ourselves. It's about how somebody else feels about something. It's about that which is of great worth. And how we feel about ourselves, the false beliefs that we have about ourselves, determines how we live our lives. And so if we're walking through life feeling unworthy, then guess what? That's how life shows up for us. That's what we experience. Those things that make us feel unworthy, those we take actions that will make us feel unworthy. How we feel about ourselves, what we believe about ourselves, are things that we get to experience. If we think that we're a loser, then guess what? You're a loser. If you think that you are not creative, then guess what? You don't get to create. You're not creative. In that sense, we're all very creative, as we know. We're always creating. But if we think that we're not creative in the sense that comparing ourselves to other people who are painters or artists or musicians or whatever the case may be, if we think that we're not creative, then we won't be. Conversely, if we think that we're successful, then we are. If we think that we're winners, then we are. If we think that we're victims, then we're always attracting something that will victimize us or someone who will victimize us. It's all up to us. That's the point I'm making. It's all up to us. It's all up to us to move beyond our own thoughts, our own beliefs, those false beliefs that we have about ourselves, and to recognize that there's that perfection that resides within us. There's that something inside us that is just seeking expression, that is just waiting to burst through any notion of limitation that we have, to be free so that it can live to its fullness through and as each one of us. That's what it's all about. That's what life is all about. That's why we're here. And so I invite you this morning to, first of all, take a breath with me, and then to just start looking at how we just keep ourselves in this place of unworthiness, and we do that through what I call one of the greatest limitations, which is the comfort zone. Our comfort zone can be a great limitation. Being in that place where we do what we've always done, we go where we always go, and we get what we've always gotten. And even though it may not be what we want, because it is known, it's comfortable. Because it's what we are used to, is comfortable. And so it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of to move out of that space. It takes a lot of faith to move out of that place of the comfort zone, because that's the place that keeps us stuck. That's the place that keeps us in that bubble of limitation, is that comfort zone. And so oftentimes we don't move out of the comfort zone because of our sense of and our false beliefs about worthiness. If we don't have a lot of what we want, oftentimes we don't receive what we want because we don't ask. And when we don't ask, oftentimes it's because we don't feel worthy. That's too much. That's too much to ask for. I just got one of these. I just had one of those. That's for other people to do. That's for other people to have. Who am I to think that I can have one of those? How to live this way, to live in this neighborhood, to live this kind of life? All those kinds of questions come up. I haven't done anything to earn this much. I don't deserve this. Worthiness and deservability go hand in hand. They're the same thing. We think we have to earn whatever it is. We think we have to earn whatever it is. And sometimes we learn these things, from other people, not just things we think about ourselves. These things come from society. They come from the way we were raised. They come from outside influences. They come from race-conscious beliefs. They come from all kinds of things. And when we buy into that, then we are caught in that unworthiness cycle, where it's like, well, it's too late now. It's too late. I didn't do it before. No point in me thinking I can accomplish this now. It's too late in my life. I've gotten too old, or I'm too young, or I'm too this, or I'm too that, or whatever the case may be. All of these are words of limitation. All of these are beliefs about how we are limited. And I'm suggesting to you and encouraging you to let those go. Look at the things that really belong to you, the beliefs that really belong to you. Do you really believe these things about yourself? Or is this something that you have heard from somebody else? Or is this somebody else's opinion? Because we don't want to get caught up in somebody else's opinion. We don't want the noise of other people's opinions to drown out the voice, our own inner voice. I think Steve Jobs said that. Don't let the noise of other people's opinions drown out your own inner voice. Don't let the noise of other people's opinions drown out your own inner voice. And other people's opinions can keep us stuck in a place of limitation. We're worried about what they think, what they've told us, what they believe about us, and then we adopt their beliefs to become our own beliefs. I love that book by Terry Cole Whittaker. What's her name? Terry Cole Whittaker. The book, What You Think of Me Is None of My Business. I love the title, even if you don't read the book. What you think of me is none of my business. When we can live our lives that way, it makes it so much more simple. What you think of me is none of my business. And if we walk through our lives that way, knowing that what other people think of us is none of our business, we are free to live the lives that we really want to live, the lives that we were created to live. Steve Jobs also said in that famous commencement address that he gave at Stanford that your time here is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Your time here is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't waste it living someone else's life. And anytime we're living according to what somebody else thinks, then we're living their life. We're living the life they want us to live, not the life we want to live. So I'm suggesting that we do a few things. Start to adopt the 4 pillars, if you will, of worthiness, one of which is acceptability. How acceptable are you to you? How acceptable are you to you? How easy is it for you to accept yourself just as you are? How easy is it for you to accept yourself knowing that you are made in the image and likeness and out of pure spirit itself, and that there's nothing that can change that except how you operate, how you believe it, how you live your life. But how acceptable are you to you? And then when you start to look at that, start also to look at how valuable are you to you? What is your value to you? How much do you value yourself? And I'm not talking about valuing ourselves by what we own or what we don't own or how much money we have or what we don't have, not by things, not by material things, but how valuable are you to you? What is your value to you? These are questions for you to really look at for yourself. How lovable are you? Do you think you're lovable? There's nothing that you could have done any time, at any place, at any time in eternity that would take you outside the love of God. That love is always, 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 always. It just is. God is always loving because God is love itself. And when we are into that place of thinking that we are not worthy, we're into a place of separation. And when we're in that place of separation, there's no way we can be in a place of self-love because we've forgotten who we are when we're in that place of separation. And so just really starting to think, how much do you love yourself? How much are you willing to love yourself? The next pillar is forgivability. Forgivability. We are all forgivable. How forgivable are you? How easy is it for you to forgive yourself? How difficult is it for you to forgive yourself? How often do you blame yourself and hold on to guilt and hold on to shame and hold on to judgment and hold on to self-criticism and all that stuff that keeps us in that place of separation and that keeps us in that place of unworthiness? Oh, I can't ask for this because I did that back here. Oh, I can't have this. I don't deserve it because I committed this whatever over here. I made this mistake over here. I can't walk forward in my life with my head up and expect to have all that God has for me because I'm not worthy, because I did these things that are unforgivable. Forgiveness is a decision. Forgiveness is a choice. We are all forgivable. And all the things that we've done are forgivable. We are forgivable. We are lovable. We are acceptable. We are valuable. These are the things we know. This is a truth that I know about each and every one of us, because I know that each and every one of us is at one with the all that is limitless. That is limitless. So we don't have to put those limitations on ourselves. And so just adopting those 4 pillars and really looking at those things for yourself: acceptability, value, lovability, and forgivability. Are you acceptable? Are you valuable? Are you lovable? Are you forgivable? Those are the 4 things that really I'm asking you to just look at for yourself. Look at those things in your life as you go through your daily life. And if you find that you have questions about them, do the work necessary to open your heart, to release you from that limitation, to help you to burst that bubble of limitation. And then start to act as if you are. Act as if you are. How would you act if you were acceptable? What would you do if you were acceptable? What would you do if you really believed, I am acceptable, I accept myself just as I am? Because you know what? It all starts with us. And when we start to accept ourselves just as we are, other people will too. It's our own way that we believe about ourselves and that we treat ourselves that informs how other people respond and react to us. There's a whole thing, you know what Dr. Phil says, we teach people how to treat us. We do. And we teach people how to treat us according to the way we feel about ourselves and what we believe about ourselves. When it's okay for someone to mistreat us, it's because that's the way we treat ourselves, and that's what we believe about ourselves. And so when we get to know and get to remember who we really are, then we don't have that issue. So coming to really act as if you're acceptable. What if you started to act as if you are valuable? That you have value, a lot of value. How would you live your life differently? Or would you live your life differently? If you recognize your true value, if you recognize who you really are and what you have to offer the world, if you had the courage to do that, to act as if this is true about you, how would your life be different? And I think it's important for us to know these things, to look at these things. Because if our lives would be different if we were living this way, then that means that we have some changes to make. But the other thing is, how would your life be different if you acted as if you're lovable? You are a lovable human being. You're the most lovable person you know. I'm the most lovable person I know. Warts and all. I'm the most lovable person I know. What if you walked around acting like that every day? I'm the most lovable person I know. How do you think other people would respond to that? How would you start to live your life differently? What if you started to act as if I'm forgivable? Whatever it is I did, however it is I was, whatever it is I didn't do, forgiveness is a decision, it's a choice. I choose to forgive myself because I'm lovable and valuable and acceptable. And so I forgive myself for mistakes I've made. I forgive myself for wrongs I committed. I forgive myself for harm I caused myself and others. I forgive myself for things I did or did not do. Take a breath on that. Burst in that bubble of limitation. Acting as if we are all these things, these pillars of worthiness. And then the third thing I want you to just keep in mind is to practice the rubber band principle. I have one here. Rubber band. It's just a rubber band. And you know what? It's not useful like this, but it is useful when it stretches. Because this is what it was created to do. Stretch. It has to stretch to fulfill its purpose. That's what we have to do. We have to stretch to fulfill our purpose. We have to stretch sometimes to see and to know that we are lovable. We have to stretch sometimes to know that we do have value, to see our own value, to stand in our own power, and to claim our own value. We have to stretch sometimes to ask, to have the nerve to ask for what we want. And to know that all that the Father hath is mine. That's what the last line of the treatment for supply says. All that the Father hath is mine. The gift has already been given. We don't have to earn it. We don't have to deserve it. We just have to stretch to believe it. We have to practice that rubber band principle over and over and over again. And there has to be some balance in there, because you know with the rubber band, if you stretch it too much, it'll break. But when you stretch it to its capacity and just a little bit beyond, it does what it's supposed to do. It does what it was created to do. And that's what happens with each of us in our own lives. We do what we were created to do. We live the way we were created to live. We are who we were created to be. When we are practicing the rubber band principle, when we are deciding that, you know what, all that the Father hath is mine. That's what we say every week when we read that treatment. I claim it. I own it. I ask for it. Ask, and it shall be given unto you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and the door shall be open unto you. Those are all the promises. Those are all the promises. The promise also is that the cattle on 1,000 hills belong to me. The cattle on 1,000 hills belong to me. It doesn't say you have to milk them. It doesn't say you have to herd them. You don't have to feed them. They already belong to you. This is what Scripture tells us. They already belong to us. It all belongs to me. All that the Father hath is mine. Not just material things, but all of the love and all of the peace and all of the harmony and all of the balance and all of the forgiveness and all of the acceptance and all of the everything that the Father hath is mine. It's mine by divine birthright. It's mine by virtue of who I am. That I am presence within me, that is who I am. That is who we all am. We all am that. We are. We am that. That's what we am. I am that. All that the Father hath is mine. I am forgiveness. I am value. I am acceptance. I am love. I am peace. I am harmony. I am joy. I am compassion. I am forgiveness. I am all of that. I am all of that. I am all of that. And when we live in oneness, when we know the truth of who we are, and we start to live in oneness and we start to move in oneness, there's no way that limitation can be around us. There's no way that bubble doesn't have to burst, that bubble of limitation. When we move into that place of knowing who we are and daring to live the rubber band principle, to stretch, to be all that we were created to be. And it takes a stretch sometimes. It takes a stretch to move out of your comfort zone. It takes a stretch to do something you've never done before. It takes a stretch to do something that you're afraid to do. It takes a stretch to subject yourself to someone's criticism or someone's opinion that may be different from yours. It takes a stretch to get out of that rut. Robert Schuller used to say, it takes guts to leave the rut. It takes guts to leave the rut. And you know, when we stay in that comfort zone and we do the same thing over and over and over again, we're getting that rut. And I can see why in 12-step programs it says insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. I'm just reminded, I used to live in Cleveland, Ohio, and, oh, right, where it snows quite a bit. And I lived in a house once where I had a next-door neighbor whose driveway was very close to our house. And he would pull in the snow and it get stuck every night. And rather than either shoveling the driveway or putting down salt or charcoal or whatever, he would get there and then he would race his motor, rev the motor, and then the tires would spin, and the tires would spin, and then he would get stuck in that snow. And he would rev them more, and it would just spin and spin and spin, and he couldn't get out of it and make all this noise. And after a while, even with the windows closed, the fumes from the rubber from the tires would come into my house, and the gas, you could smell the gas because he was constantly revving the motor, and he did this every night. And I often wonder why doesn't he realize this is how you do a rut. You keep doing the same thing over and over, and your tires keep spinning, and he got that rut, and he couldn't get out of it. And then you'd hear his sons and different people from around the neighborhood come and help him push his car on down the driveway. I never quite got that. He didn't either. So but you know what? That's how we live our lives sometimes. That's how we live our lives. Sometimes we're in that rut, and we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and it keeps getting deeper and deeper, and we just keep doing the same thing. And maybe if I really press the engine hard this time, I'll get out of it. And we don't. We just get stuck deeper in it. And it may not be in a car, but it may be some other area of your life where I'll just plow ahead just keep doing it. And I just keep getting stuck deeper and deeper and deeper. We don't have to do that, but that's a comfort zone because that's the way we've always done it. We may decide one day, you know what, I'm going to stretch. I'm going to get out and I'm going to put a plank down here and so that I can just drive easily over this area in the snow, this rut that I've created. I'm going to sprinkle some salt down. I'm going to put some charcoal down, something that will help me get out of this rut and just move forward. Whatever it is that you need to do that's different, whatever it is that requires you to stretch, whatever it is that requires you to go beyond that comfort zone, it's worth it. You're worth it. Don't allow that worthiness factor, when we use it as an unworthiness factor, to keep us in that bubble of limitation. If we are going to use the worthiness factor, use it because I am worthy. I am worthy to be beyond this point. I am worthy to have more than this. I am worthy of a greater life. I am worthy of a life that transcends anything that I've had before. The I am worthy is what gets us out of that. That's what requires us to stretch. That's the worthiness factor we want to take on. The worthiness factor, not the unworthiness factor. And oftentimes, it's the opposite. It's the unworthiness. I'm inviting you today to take on the worthiness factor. Stretch. Go for it. What do you have to lose? Think on that. Let's take a breath and go into prayer. Just moving into that place of knowing and sensing and feeling God's presence. Knowing that that presence is everywhere present. There's no spot where God is not. The only power, the only presence, the only life, the only mind, the only breath, the only factor is God. This onlyness is my life. This onlyness is the life of each of us here this day. And so I'm speaking a word for each of us this day that we are moving out of any sense of limitation. I'm speaking a word of freedom. A word of freedom as we burst free of this bubble of limitation, letting go of the doubt and the fear and the comfort zones. Letting go of the inadequacies and all the other stuff that we hold on to. Just opening ourselves up to the allness and the fullness of God. Opening ourselves up to all the love and all the acceptance and all the forgiveness and all of the joy and all of the harmony and everything that makes our lives new, that makes our lives rich, that makes our lives full. All of that that is healing. All of that that represents wholeness. I'm accepting this for each one of us right here, right now, this day. Knowing that no matter what is going on in our lives, no matter the losses or the changes or the disappointments, that there's that presence in the midst of it all, that loving presence that heals all wounds, that heals all hearts, that loving presence that just loves and loves and loves and loves. We just take a breath as we just allow this love to bubble up and bubble over, transcending all the limits that we may have experienced at any time in our lives. We open up to experience a greater life of peace and harmony and love. And so as I open this circle of prayer, I pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer this day. You may speak their names silently or aloud, and you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I know that God is right where each of them is, blessing and keeping them. This prayer goes out to anyone on this planet needing a prayer this day. All those who were affected and impacted by the earthquakes in California and beyond. God is in the midst of everything, every situation, every circumstance, every earthquake, every flood, every fire. God is in the midst. Regardless of the appearance, God is. And so I just say thank you, Father, Mother, God, for the healing that's taking place in all of our lives, for the growth and expansion that we all experience, and for our willingness to experience it. I give thanks. I know indeed that all is well, and I just allow it to be. And so it is.